How are you, buddy?
Oh, man. That is going to be hard to follow. In fact,
Can't beat marzipan lorazepam.
I don't think I can. I don't think I can.
How's it going?
It's going good.
Good. Thanks for coming on the show.
Oh,
Yeah.
You're welcome. This is great.
Yeah, it's pretty, beautiful Spokane behind us.
Yeah.
It's warm in here and freezing out there. So.
You know, and I'm not usually allowed in the library, so this is kind of neat.
Most authors aren't.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
A lot of weird resentment in the field.
I like to come in and sign everybody else's books.
Right.
That's a good move.
Changing my name to Steve King.
Right. But you do a lot of traveling to stay out of the libraries, yes?
I do a lot of traveling to stay out of the library.
Yeah.
One of the things about writing young adult is that you get a lot of time spent in schools.
Yeah.
Like school visits, high schools mostly, and some middle schools, and then teacher conferences, English teacher. I do English teacher conferences. I know the English teachers in my lifetime that would be just spinning in their graves if they knew that.
Speaking of that, I kind of want to go back to my high school and tell some of my teachers that I work for a library now, because I think
Oh yeah.
they would be
Prove it.
Well, now that I've written,
Prove it, Tucker.
Now that I've written 14 more books than I read in high school, I could probably dazzle some folks.
right.
But you do travel a lot, and I got on a kind of a circuit. There's American international schools are all over the world.
Sure.
And once you get on that thing, I mean, in 1964, just after I graduated from high school, I came to Spokane because I had enrolled at Eastern, yeah, the college, not the hospital, and I got to Spokane. This town is like half again as big as Boise.
Yeah.
I called my parents. And so I hadn't traveled much. I grew up in a town of like 943 people. I had 15 people in my graduating class.
Yeah.
2 of those were fifth-year students.
Spokane's a big city.
Yeah. We had 10 boys and 5 girls in our.
Oh, wow.
Left the boys in serious social retardation well into our 20s and 30s because even the 5 girls didn't want to have anything to do with us. Sure. So I didn't travel much. And I was looking over my history since about '85. I've gone about 2 million air miles since then. So I can get my shoes off, man.
Right. You got that extra leg.
Every time you travel, you dress twice.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. But you went to Mumbai. Yes?
I did go to Mumbai.
And what was that like? What did you?
You know, I've been to Singapore. I've been to China 2 or 3 times. Been to Japan.
Was that were these all to speak at the American International?
And those international schools. You usually go for about a week, and you talk to classes. You talk about books, and you talk about kind of where the stories come from and all that. And so I'd probably been in about 12 or 13 different countries. And I went to Mumbai, and it was different from almost any of the others. And I'd been to places that were real crowded. I mean, I was in Jakarta, which is considered like the worst traffic anywhere.
Oh, really?
But in Mumbai, the traffic moves like one thing.
Oh, really? Like it's a living
I mean,
element.
They have signs on the back of any vehicle that says "Okay, honk, please," and honking is like language.
Yeah.
And
Morse
so when
code.
Look out! Don't hit me. And And I had an embassy driver, and this guy he was about 22 or 23 years old. And man, he was something. I mean, he took me every place, and we'd go to some place to eat, and he would just disappear, and he'd say, buzz me, text me like 5 minutes before you need me to be, and he would show up.
Yeah.
And at some point I said, he'd been driving me around for about 10 days or so. I said, man, you are some rockin' driver.
Right.
And he said, I don't know. I go to the States and drive like this, and up comes the finger. I said, yeah, we have a little different language. But the Mumbai thing was memorable to me because I had written a book. I think my 8th or 9th book was a book called "Staying Fat" for Sarah Burns, and it was about a young girl. It was loosely based on a true incident. A girl who had been intentionally disfigured by her drunken, raging father when she was 3 years old. And so she had burn scars on her face. And I got to India, and one of the things that they did at the school was they would go to an orphanage once a week and just read books to kids.
Oh, okay.
And this orphanage was an orphanage for kids, all these kids who had been orphaned by AIDS.
Oh,
so
good.
No chance of getting mom back.
Right,
I mean,
yeah,
the loss was the loss, and it was just a gray, building. I mean,
Yeah.
I saw these two kids playing. They had a little wooden wheel that was about the size of a candy lifesaver
Sure.
with a string through it, and that was their toy.
Oh boy. Yeah.
So these kids come in, and there's this little girl. She's probably 5 years old, 5 or 6 years old, and she runs in, and I can only see her from the side. And she's just gorgeous. I mean, just, one of those kids that you think, should be doing commercials.
Right, yeah.
But when she comes around the corner, she had acid thrown on the other
Oh,
side
my
of her
goodness.
face because it would make her, better beggar.
Oh my God.
And I mean, her eye was missing. It was pretty grotesque. And all these kids they protected her like every one of them was her brother or her mom or whatever it was. And she was kind of my Indian Sarah Burns. And she sat, they kind of they could pick who they wanted to listen to, what stories.
Yeah.
And boy, they all wanted English, because that's the avenue out.
Oh.
And so they're there, and I was reading the story, and she was sitting right beside me, and I would start reading, and she would rub my leg.
Yeah.
And if I stopped, she stopped rubbing my leg. So it was like
Yeah.
the more she liked the story.
Yeah. Oh, gosh.
And there's another kid, and it just kind of reminded me. It's so good to get away, and look at us from the outside.
Sure, yeah,
and you can't help it. But there was another young kid there. He was probably 9, and he was in the group too, and he was just this proper little guy.
Yeah.
And when we got to the end, I was asking some questions about it, and every time his hand went up, and boy, he knew the answer better than I did, and I just read it.
Right.
And later, I was talking to him. I said, "Wow," I said, "You really pay attention." I said, "What do you want to be when you grow up?"
Yeah.
And he said, "I want to be a sir.
A sir.
I want respect."
Yeah.
I said, "Man, you are going to get it."
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. So
I mean,
pretty.
that's the
pretty
cool stuff about
powerful,
travel.
moment there. Wow. That's pretty incredible. Yeah. Oh boy. Sorry. That
A lot of people.
that hit me
Well, yeah,
pretty
and the
hard.
thing, I mean, when I say the traffic moves like one thing, at one point I saw a walk sign.
Yeah.
It looked like a dare. If you're not willing to walk across the top of the trunk or
I'm really glad
order,
you
it's a
stayed at the end of that
suggestion.
conversation with a joke, because I was looking for one and I could not get there. But tell me about your newest book, Loser's Bracket.
Yeah, a lot of people think it's my biography. No, it's a story. There are a couple of things. It's a departure in a couple of ways. One is it's a female narrator, which is in 15 books. That's my first one.
Yeah.
And it's based. It's what got the story going was I spent 20 years, probably 15, 20 years full-time as a child abuse and neglect counselor here in town.
Right.
And I ran the child protection team for 30-some years. So I heard a lot of
Horrible stories.
pretty horrible stories. But the thing that just kept coming back and coming back and coming back was the power of family, the power of biology.
Yeah.
I mean, whatever it is that runs through our bloodstreams. And I would work with kids, and some kids that were, I mean, in situations that you feared for them. I mean, you pick up the paper on Monday morning to make sure they were still around.
Yeah.
And for some of them, no matter what, they just wanted to get back to mom. Just wanted to get back to
No
mom.
matter
And
how bad the circumstances.
No matter how bad the circumstances were. And sometimes when they got there, I mean, they'd have to get out again. But just the power of wanting to get back and trying to fix it. I mean, 5-year-old kids trying to fix it. So this is a girl. The character in this story is a girl. Her name is Annie, and she's a high school kid. She's getting ready to go out, and she's in a foster home that takes care of her. And I mean, her line is, I have the family I need, but I don't have the one I want.
Right.
And so she's doing all kinds of things to get back to the other family. The foster family and the bio family don't get along real well. And so she's sneaky. But one of the things, she's a real good athlete, and one of the things that she can do is she can't, since she's been in permanent care, she no longer has any visits, so she knows that her parents can come see her if she in public.
Yeah.
And so, and where the title comes from is she plays Hoop Fest here in Spokane, and she knows that if she blows the first game, she can come back up through the losers bracket, play twice as many games,
and
twice as many
able to see her
chances
family.
to get her
Wow.
family,
Oh, goodness.
who only once in a while show up.
Oh man, Chris, this is some heavy stuff, buddy.
Well, you know, I always wanted to be a comedian.
You're right. Speaking of which, though, a lot of your books have been challenged because you're pretty brutally honest in your writing, and you know, obviously dealing with some really sensitive issues, and you know, you've met some you know, butted heads on getting your books out there. Yes, and
Yeah, I'm pretty proud to say that every book I've written has been challenged and or banned someplace.
right, yeah,
Which is like,
it's a
wow.
yeah. Absolutely.
ban me. People who wouldn't even know my name because I get in the newspaper because I'm banned.
Yeah.
I thought I'd buy that book and see why it's banned.
Right. Yeah.
And meanwhile, and the funny thing about that is, I mean, I guess I get it. I mean, I get this idea. I mean, the idea is that if we can control what goes into our kids' heads, we can keep them safe, and that's pretty much opposite of what is true in the real world.
Right.
And so if I write, if you put a story, if you write a story and there's sexual content, I write about teenagers, and I'm going to write with no sexual content.
Right. Yeah.
Kids don't think about sex.
Right. Yeah.
So, somebody asked me when there was some survey out that talked about the number of times that men and boys think about sex every day, and when they got to me, I was fairly young, and they got to me, and I said just once, all day long. I wake up, and then I go to sleep. But so if there's sexual content in it, you know, that's a piece. If for a long time, if anybody anybody with a sexual preference that was not just, you know, heterosexual times 50 would get banned. I mean, walk into the state of Kansas and the first time I ever got banned, I didn't get banned. The first time I ever got kind of censored was like in my own hometown.
Oh wow, really?
So yeah, I mean, I live in
That's a good badge
Idaho.
of honor.
Yeah.
Idaho, where, you know, Arkansas with no accent.
Idaho fans in the crowd today.
Only fooling. But so there's that. You know, sometimes if there's discussion about faith, if there's discussion about,
Sure.
and even if that discussion, I mean, as much as I can, I try to do both sides of almost any conversation.
Sure.
But there's just this idea that it makes some adults really uncomfortable to talk about these things, and they don't want their kids bringing it home from school, or they don't want to bring it home from the library, whatever it is. And, you know, I mean, the reality is you're not, you know, whether you live in a free country or not a free country, the one free thing you have is your mind.
Right.
You know, you can think, and you can't stop.
Have you
thinking.
seen a shift at all in like that
You
being
know,
more of like parents wanting to start a discussion, or
You know, in the 80s, when I started working with abuse and neglect, there really did seem to be a push to get rid of secrets.
Yeah.
Secrets are killers.
Yeah.
I mean, the family secrets, you know, out in society, all that, they're just killers. And there really did seem to be a move. And I grew up, you know, my high school time was early 60s, college time was in the late 60s. So, you know, we thought we got rid of the book banning thing.
right? Yeah.
But it came back really hard. And it was funny because most of the people who wanted me banned early on were the conservative right. I mean, it would be the Christian right, or just the political right. And you know, my dad was a bomber pilot in World War II. By the time he was the same age I was when I graduated from high school, or from college, he had flown 35 missions over Germany in B-17.
Yeah.
He was the pilot. And he would come back, and he was a patriot, and he was really well-read, and he was a conservative politician.
Yeah.
And he'd run a nail through his eye before he'd let a book get banned. He thought he fought a war for that.
Right, yeah.
So there was a shift, and it was a big shift.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden we were doing a lot of that. And that was kind of that was where most of it came from. Recently you see more of it from the politically correct left.
Sure.
And I mean, you know, Bernie Sanders could break his neck looking left for me, because that's where I am.
Right.
And you can have that discussion.
Yeah.
But, you know, I mean, the N-word in Huckleberry Finn,
Sure.
That conversation
Yeah.
is a real interesting conversation. So it comes from both places.
Yeah, it's interesting.
And-
There's no...
And you know, the idea that in my head, and I grew up with this, is that it's easy to stand up for what you like. It's easy to stand up for the books that you love or the movies, whatever it is. It's just as important, or probably more important, to stand up for what you hate.
Yeah.
To stand up for everybody's right to be able to say what
Yeah,
you want to say.
absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, do you have any projects coming up?
I do. I have. If you were my editor, I'd say
They're done.
I'm on the last chapter. Yeah. But you're not. And I don't think she'll see this. I treat my editor like I treated my sophomore English teacher, right? Can't tell you how many different animals peed on my homework. I have a couple of projects, and I don't usually write two books at the same time, because it's real hard to keep them straight. And
Sure,
I can't
yeah.
remember which character went where, but I had written a book. A while back, and it was the aftermath of a particularly brutal shooting. Mm-hmm. And it was kind of like the Newtown shooting, the Sandy Hook shooting. It was little kids, but I put it in a mall, and it was kids. The opening of the mall, and the kids are waiting to see Santa Claus, and the sniper has perfect view, and you can't get to him.
Yeah.
So there's that thing, and
Fun.
the story takes, yes, another hey, I am big on comedy, man. And the story takes place when the survivors are juniors and seniors in high school. So it's that. And the place that the story came from, actually, and there are probably people here who remember the shooting, the Barry Lucaitis shooting in Moses Lake in 1997, I think. Right? It was back before the Columbine shooting. And because I had dealt with some pretty rugged subjects and things like that, I got a couple of emails from kids who had been in that room when Barry Lucaitis came with a gun. And it was a really scary thing, because he killed the kid he was mad at, and he killed another kid who was sitting beside him, and then he shot the teacher as she got up to try to save him, and killed her. And then he wounded one more person, and then lined kids up against the back, and he was going to shoot them all. Yeah. And finally a coach got into the room, another teacher got into the room and got the gun away and got it stopped. But there was a lot of time in there. And the kids who were there, I mean, they were pretty sure this was it.
Sure, a lot of PTSD.
So yeah, and the notes, the letter, one in particular, I got two that I remember real well, and they were kids who wrote me after they were supposedly they were supposed to graduate from high school, so it'd be like 5 years later. It was after Columbine. Mm-hmm. And the letters, one in particular was a girl who said, you know, I was in that room. We were 8th graders. She said I was going to be a marine biologist. I already knew I was going to go to the UW. I had it all planned out. Yeah. And she said I haven't gotten my GED yet. She said I've been on drugs. I've gotten into all kinds of trouble, promiscuity. I mean, you name it. Yeah. And it's just she couldn't pull it back together. So the story that I wrote was that, and that is, I've got it in line. Was the aftermath, and these kids trying to put together,
sort their lives out.
You know, that those pieces of their lives are going to let them stand up for themselves. And there's, you know, in a condition like that, friendship is everything.
Absolutely.
You know, and understanding, you know, having somebody understand where I'm coming from is
Right. Do
gold
those
at that
kids
point.
all have like
Yeah.
a bond that?
So and their bond is
Yeah.
tight, and they live in gun country.
Yeah.
You know.
Oh man.
So so that is finished, but and then I'm working on another little.
Finished.
Little more comedic about a kid who gets a scholarship to a really cool writing summer writing workshop in Vermont, I think I put it. And he's real excited, except that the essays that were turned in that he's getting the scholarship for weren't written by him. So he goes to writing school and he can't write, which is, I'm having PTSD for that. But one of the reasons that I slowed down with the shooting book, it's called Some Guy, and right when the shooting happened at Stoneman Douglas in Florida recently. I knew the librarian, Diana Haneska, who opened the library door when she was supposed to close it and lock it, opened the library door to let more kids in.
Yeah.
I knew her because she had invited me to a school that she worked at before Stoneman Douglas. And so when it happened, it was just like, God, here it goes again. I mean, and I contacted her and I said, I'll tell you what, you guys got a freebie. I'll come down, I'll fly myself, I'll put myself up.
Yeah,
but,
absolutely.
Just kind of that give back
yeah.
thing. I said, you can have it next year, let things calm down.
Sure, yeah.
Next year after that, whenever you want. She called me about 2 weeks later.
Yeah.
And she said, we got to do this now.
Do it now.
So I went down there, and it's a school of like 3,000 kids, and people talk about the security guard that should have gone in, and I mean they have all kinds of reasons, but it's like you would never have known where the shots were coming from. I mean you were just that guy was outgunned.
Right.
But what was really amazing to me when I was there was. While she had me come, and then she had a number of local authors come. She had me come for 2 days, and then she had local authors, and it was as diverse as you could possibly be. Ethnically diverse, sexual preference, you name it. There was authors that wrote everything.
Yeah.
And so I would do this kind of keynote thing in the morning, and then she had people kind of staggered in, and we'd do panels. And what was amazing about it for me was that we'd get done talking, everybody talk a little bit about their latest book or the book that they thought was germane to these kids' lives. And when it was over, boy, these kids just went to find that author that wrote something about their life.
Right.
And boy, you know how a lot of times adolescents they aren't telling they were telling their stories.
Yeah.
These kids felt immortality was no longer the deal.
Right.
And the stories that they were telling, they weren't stories about shooting. They were stories about standing up. They were stories about wanting somebody to see them.
Right.
And the crazy part about it was, we were there the first day, and it was a different kind of experience than I'd had. And we started the second day, and I was doing the morning talk. And as I'm doing the morning talk, I feel my phone is vibrating, and everybody else's phone is vibrating too. And the shooting in Houston was going on right then.
Right then.
So kids are picking up their phones. We're all wearing wristbands that say "never again."
Right.
Instantly obsolete.
Right. God.
So,
Jeez.
And way too late to make a long story short, but some of the conversations I had, I knew had to get back into this book.
Fortunately, though, being there 2 weeks later was
Oh God.
pretty appropria.
Oh yeah.
I mean, that's pretty. I mean,
It
that's
was
pretty,
crazy.
That's pretty.
And I think that's probably one of the reasons that when I saw that shooting happen and I was watching it on TV like everybody else, I thought, I got my head in this thing already. So if it helps, I'll be down.
You're there.
And it was Florida.
Right.
It's warm down there. They have an ocean.
So, did you do any light reading, or have you read anything good lately?
Actually, I read a lot of nonfiction.
Uh-huh.
I just finished *Sapiens*,
Yeah.
and you got to read
Sean's
that.
the reader.
I do a little bit of reading from
Have you
time
heard
to time.
*Sapiens*? That'll put you on your head.
Yeah.
It's the history of everything,
Oh, fun.
and it's actually user friendly. It's understandable,
Cool.
right? And then the sequel to it is I think, called The History of the Future.
Oh, okay.
Which is anyway. So those I just started reading Where the Crawdads Sing.
Yeah.
And I'm not far enough into it yet to know exactly the story, but I'll tell you what, if I could write like that,
Yeah.
I'd be like famous.
No more library late night talk shows.
Hey,
for
I'm
you.
out of here. That's right. That's right. I get up at 11, have breakfast, and I'm in bed by 2.
Chris, your new book is out everywhere. You can grab it, Loser's Bracket.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep.
And Chris Crutcher, everybody, thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you.
I appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Thanks a lot. That's great.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Whew. You know, you do a great job of like heavy to levity. That was
They go hand in
pretty
hand.
masterful, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.